Not everyone gets excited about point-and-shoot cameras these days, but Sony just gave a very good reason for video creators to get hyped. They just announced the Sony ZV-1. It inherits the body design and the large 1-inch sensor and the fast 1.8 to 2.8 24 to 70mm lens from the RX100 series. And if you've used any of those cameras, you know that's a very good sign. It takes 20.1 megapixel still photos, but most importantly, it shoots 4K video with no record limit. It also shoots high frame rates up to 960 frames per second, supports interval shooting. It's Sony's first flip out side screen. It's got a giant record button on top of the camera. It's actually the biggest button up there. It's got a red tally light so you know when it's recording, and its autofocus supports real-time eye tracking, which Sony had already perfected, but now there's a new product priority AF, which is designed for YouTubers like me in mind. Wait, what about this? Okay, what about this? Is this my favorite new feature? Basically, there's no more doing this to try to make it autofocus. Beauty YouTubers, you know what I mean. It's got active image stabilization. It'll rotate the video files to vertical if you're holding the camera that way, which means it's easy to edit them into Instagram stories or TikTok. Very underrated feature. Also importantly, it's got HDMI out and a mic in so you can have more professional style setups. And the feature that I was most excited to try out is a new 3-capsule built-in mic with a good set of preamps. That's very rare in any video camera. In the US, it's $799, and in Canada, $999, which can feel like a steep price for a small camera like this, but when you consider what's packed in here, I actually think it's pretty reasonable. And by the way, this A-roll footage right now, this is being recorded on the ZV-1. So what do you think? I think it looks pretty great. Now let's switch over to my usual camera so that we can take a closer look at this exciting new Sony. Let's start with the body and design. It's very similar to the RX100 cameras, which is a good thing. It feels very nice. They did sacrifice having a built-in EVF so that they could have this flip out screen, which I think we can all agree is worth the trade-off, especially when it comes to video. I mean, it's just really hard to get anything done without one of these. And before we get too far into this review, I want to take full credit for this camera's existence, because I've mentioned on the podcast several times that there should be a completely video-focused camera like this, and now there is. To get a sense of what this thing could do, I brought it on our bike ride the other day, just kind of casually vlogging, messing around. All right, so I've got to test out this camera. I think the best way to do it is we're gonna go for a bike ride. And the first thing you'll notice is that this footage is very shaky. This is with regular stabilization turned on. Then later I realized that wasn't enough and I turned on active. Makes a huge difference, but it crops in quite a bit. And this is a fantastic lens. 24 to 70 is a perfect range. It's very useful for a lot of things. It's great for this kind of setup. But when you're holding it out in front of your face like this, it starts to feel a little too close. Like it's just enough. It's passable. You can totally use this. But I just wish it was a little. 24mm is basically the bare minimum. It's exactly enough to get the job done, but we really could have used something closer to 20, 18. I know the reason they went with this is they'd already developed this great 24mm 1.8 to 2.8 lens. It works great in the RX100s. It's still a solid lens, but wider would have been so much more useful. There's also the Vlogger accessory kit available that I forgot it at home. So it's not in this video, sorry. But going back to our bike ride footage, just looking at it, it's beautiful. I mean, this really produces great image quality. That large sensor pulls its weight. It's extremely sharp, which we've come to expect from Sony's. It's got a refined color profile that I know they've been tweaking, because they get a lot of feedback. Sony colors aren't the best. You be the judge in this. But I'm glad they also put in other picture profiles, like it's got Cine 1, Cine 2, S-Log. But most people buying a point and shoot like this will be using the default picture profile, and I'm just glad Sony is paying some attention to it. Now, let's quickly talk about the microphone on here. I recorded some quick tests just to see what it's like compared to some other mics. This is a test of the internal mic on the Sony ZV-1. This is a test of the internal mic on the Canon M100. This is a test of the Rode VideoMic Me. This is a test of the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus. This is the internal mic on the Sony ZV-1. This is a test of the internal mic on the Canon M100. This is a test of the self-facing internal microphones on the iPhone 11 Pro. And so overall, my impressions are that, okay, it still sounds like a small microphone, but that's okay, because It is. I wouldn't expect them to put a large mic on top of here, which is what you'd really need to capture a lot of the bass that bigger microphones are able to produce. But it's a very clean microphone instead of preamps, and that is super important. There isn't that hiss and that noise underneath that you often get. So around 2 p.m., this battery pretty much died. I did have a charger with me, but recording 4K, that's how long it lasted. So I know that there's a lot of people that go out, they just buy their camera and they put it on a tripod and talk to it, and that's how they make YouTube videos. So for that kind of person, this is exactly what you need. If you're too lazy to put an extra mic on, it's gonna sound pretty good. Always, the most important thing is actually the proximity of the mic to your face. So that's good news. If you're holding it like this, you generally have good audio, but if it's across the room, you should still have some kind of external audio because you need it. A neat little trick is they added this bokeh blurry background button. So in one press, it'll prioritize all the settings to blur out the background. What I noticed is that it doesn't actually trigger the ND filter. Yes, this has a built-in ND, another big point scorer for a video camera. But if you really want bokeh, you should also add an ND. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't do that. But the big record button on top is as good as it sounds. Often I'll just reach out and that is what I feel first and press, and I don't press the wrong button. I like that. And there's not a lot I have to say about the stills on this. I didn't test them all that properly, but I could tell they worked well. And honestly, this is gonna be a very good stills camera too. It can be both. You're not really sacrificing still image quality that much by buying this video camcorder. What's the definition of a camcorder these days? Now that we've seen Sony make a hybrid camera that really favors the video functions, let's see them double down in the a7S III. Honestly, I've always thought of the a7S series as kind of a compromise. Like, the video quality is great, but it's still a stills camera with good video internals. Design the whole thing, beginning to end, for video. Sony, I believe in you. You can do it. Sony is going to be marketing this as the ultimate vlogging camera. And you know what? That's not really what I think it is. It would need a wider lens for that. But it is an ultimate everything else video camera. Basically, if you want to get into YouTube and have the simplest possible kit, this is it. I mean, in this camera community, if you're watching camera videos, you may not understand how bad the average image quality on YouTube can be. And this will bring it up to a professional level. The audio and the video quality will be great. So I'm going to be recommending this camera to a lot of people, but don't take my word for it. Go listen to the podcast where we'll talk about it much more in depth. Jordan Drake's going to come on from DP Review TV. Go into whatever podcatcher player you like and just search for the Stalman podcast. It's going to be there. And actually, it's a YouTube channel now, so subscribe to that. I just keep forgetting to push that on you guys. Go subscribe to the Stalman podcast on YouTube.